So welcome to the very first panel discussion that relaunches Silvertent TV. And typically we'd have some technical hitches on the first one, but never mind. So thank you to all of you who've come to join me in the panel, which is fantastic. Thank you. And thank you to everybody who is choosing to watch the recording of this. So this is the first panel discussion of the new relaunched Silvertent TV, and it's building up. We've got another panel discussion tomorrow on sacred sites and ley lines, and then on Wednesday, the solstice, which is like the focal point of the relaunch, we're building up to a panel discussion on sex and the older woman. And I think that's going to be very, very exciting. And then we've got some interviews throughout the week as well. And for anyone that's watching this who doesn't actually know what the Silvertent is, it's an amazing community of women over 50 from everywhere around the globe. And yes, so very exciting. Our conversation today is about the power of women over 50 and whatever that might mean. So Annie, I think you suggested that we talk at some point about what we actually mean by power. So we'll see where that wants to emerge in the conversation. But I just wanted to set the scene very briefly about how the Silvertent came about. And so quite a few years ago, when I was 59, just going into my 60th year, I had a kind of meltdown, a kind of dark night of the soul, where I looked at my life and thought that I had made a complete and utter hash of it. And I felt like I had absolutely nothing to show for those 60 years on this planet. I had no partner, no children, no home of my own, no job, no business, no career, no money. And it kind of felt like I had nothing really. And I was living in a house that belonged to my friends. And in order to offer an exchange, so that they covered, I didn't have to pay them rent or anything, and they bought my food, I would help with the children and the cooking and that kind of thing. And I woke up one morning with a really horrid chest infection, thinking, I've messed up my life. Right. I've messed up my life. It's too late to make any changes. It's just downhill from now on until I die. And for the first time, I didn't try and G myself out of it. I didn't try and look at the positive. I just looked this horrifying thought in the face, which was very depressing. But that seemed to shift something. It took quite a long time, but as I think that honesty of myself, I think there was an integrity at facing that idea. It doesn't mean that I did make a complete mess of it, but the fact that I stayed with it seemed to shift things. And within a couple of weeks, I got offered a fantastic job writing content for a spiritual tour company based in Peru. And with that job, the spiritual tour company was run by a friend of mine. He paid for me to do his 5-week main tour, like the big gem in the crown, of his tour agency. So I had a 5-week bucket list trip to Peru. And so just a few weeks after feeling like my life was completely over, I was staggering up the Andes, completely unfit to be at that altitude on that. If you've never been to the Andes, they are like that. And it is very high. But I had the most amazing time. I went to Machu Picchu, Lake Titicaca. Oh, I mean, it was just a fantastic 5 weeks out there. And I ended up in the Amazon jungle with doing an ayahuasca retreat for a week as well. So a completely different kind of experience I'd been having there compared to my life in St. Albans looking after these children. But on the flight from Lima to Lake Titicaca, I was sitting next to one of the other people on the tour. who was the same age as me, but she looked like an old woman. To me, she looked like an old person. She wasn't. She was just absolutely fantastic. And halfway across the Andes, I realized that she was amazing. And she was very funny. And somehow she just shared this wisdom, just kept coming out through all this humor. And this little aha moment that went, I wonder if we women over 50 have wisdom worth sharing. And it was this seed that stayed with me. A few months after I got back from Peru, I ended up spending 4 months during the wildest, wettest winter on record in Wales in an off-grid yurt on a wild Welsh hillside alone. And I came out of that feeling resilient and resourceful. And that thought that we are women over 50 have wisdom worth sharing kept coming up to the surface. And about 6 months after that, I did an extraordinary shamanic retreat. And we were told that we would reconnect with a vow that we'd made eons ago, and that we would finally actually bring that vow to manifestation. Within 2 weeks of that, the silver tent, the concept for the silver tent, just dropped as a complete project into my imagination of creating a community of women over 50 to pool our wisdom and to take it out into the world. And the more that I look at what's happening in the world today, the more I believe that our wisdom is vital. It's absolutely vital. And some of you will have heard me say that we are each a unique stitch in the cardigan of life. Well, I got another little layer of that earlier on, is that we are not just unique stitches, but we are united stitches. So we are each a unique and united stitch in the cardigan of life. And I really saw us as each one of us sharing our unique perspective, our unique gift of wisdom, but somehow it would all form this incredible tapestry together and be of value in the world. And here we are, we've got, how many have we got? We've got 8 of us or something, doing just that around this subject. And so I'm really excited about that. So that's setting the scene of the silver tent and the conversation on the power of women over 50. So I would love to introduce our panel. We've got Steffi, hello Steffi, who is my absolute amazing wing woman and is doing the admin for this. We've got the gorgeous Deborah Sophia Magdalene. Hi Deborah, thanks so much for coming. We've got Vanessa Squire-Kaliski, who is just wonderful, wonderful. I mean, you all are, that's the thing, you all are. And we've got the wonderful Conchetta. Hi Conchetta, and Mary, and Charlemagne, and Annie. And we're quite global today in England and France and America. So really wonderful. So thank you all for being here. So what I'd love to start, and I really see this conversation as just being very organic and just going wherever it wants to flow. So I'm not going to dictate lots of questions, but I'd love to open with a question to anybody that would love to share, is about that sense of feeling different after 50, because I know that Deborah's got a great story about this absolute feeling of difference when you hit 50. So I'd love to know, first of all, I'd love to hear from Deborah, but if anybody else has that sense of feeling different after 50, then I would love to hear your stories.
Oh, thanks, Francesca. And yeah, I mean, 50 for me was a real turning point. And, you know, I realized it was actually after a coaching session that I had, and my coach said, where do you come on your list of priorities? And I thought, oh gosh, nobody's ever asked me that before. And I listed all the people that I was putting before me, and I was like number 8 on my list. And I thought, I need to change that, and I need to start prioritizing myself. And I thought, what's the one thing that I really want to do more than anything? And it was to travel. But that's really hard when you've got children. You know, my children weren't young, they were 22 and 24 at the time. But I had a mortgage and bills and, you know, a job. Well, I was running my own business. And so I thought, what if I didn't have my house? You know, what if I didn't have those bills? And so I sold my house and gave virtually everything away so that I didn't have those ties anymore, because I realized that I'd become a prisoner to my possessions that were rooting me in one place. And that was 13 years ago. And I've been living that lifestyle ever since, where it just gives me freedom to travel. And there's a lot of similarities in our journey. You know, I remember in 2013, I bought a one-way ticket to Peru. And I started with the ayahuasca retreat in the Amazon rainforest, where you entered with that. And then I did the trek over the Andes to Machu Picchu, and it was like a dream come true. And I just remember being there as the sun was rising, and just tears of gratitude and awe just rolling down my whole being, and feeling so grateful to be there, because it had been on my vision board for 8 years. And I was asking the wrong question. I was asking, how can I ever get there? How can I ever afford this? Whereas, you know, what I know now in my wisdom is that it's not our job to figure out the how, it's our job to figure out the what. You know, what is it that we want? What is it that our heart truly desires? And I think being in the Amazon and working with the amazing ayahuasca plant medicine gave me that multi-dimensional experience, because it's an entheogen and not a psychedelic. And it allows you to see beyond the veil. And I could see everything, and everything just became so clear about the power that I had as a creator, and how I could stand in my own power, and how I could manifest like that, and how I living on a high vibration, and every thought, you know, I could see the geometry of the thoughts that I was having forming geometry, which then forms into the astral and forms into the physical. And so I was shown lots and lots of things which, you know, then became my reality. And it's just like an honor to be walking this path, and being in the Silver Tent and in Synergy in particular has been such a blessing, because it's connected me with sisters all over the world. We've had some really magical meetups, and I just really value this community, because we all learn, we all grow, and use each other as reflections. So for me, living this path as a wise woman and standing into that, you know, I'm 62 now, and I think every decade we walk into like a new chapter, and we embrace something new and something really special, and embrace more of who we are. So yeah, it's a pleasure to be here with you.
Wow, Deborah, thank you so much. If I wasn't already where I am in my age, I'd actually be really excited to be getting to 50. And that's what I want, because I really love the idea that women under 50 will actually look forward to being over 50 and being the other side of menopause, and that it isn't the way that I thought it was going to be, which was downhill. And so I love what you're sharing. Thank you so much. Would anybody else like to share their experience of, yeah, Concetta, thank you.
Well, I thought my 40s were tumultuous times. That was the 90s for me. And every major life transition that could have occurred, you know, you've got that scale, the stress scale. Well, I hit the top 10. I lost both my parents. I had an autoimmune disease crop up. I lost 2 jobs, and my marriage ended. So my 40s were an interesting time. And so by the time I got to 50, I think I was feeling less likely to say, oh, what's next? Because I'd learned that was not going to be a good idea, because you'll get shown what's next. And I was a little gun shy for what was going to come next. But what happened was a really delightful surprise, in that I moved to a new country at 50. My 50, decade became my years of pourquoi pas, why not? And I think that part of the power was transforming all of that major challenges, I'll call them, or life experiences from my 40s. I think I arrived at 50 and went, well, time to take a leap and take all that I might have learned. And if that, what is it Nietzsche says, what doesn't kill us make us stronger. And so if that hadn't killed me, okay, well, I'm off on this adventure. And long story short, the Frenchman that I had met on a beach back in my 20s came back into my life and invited me to come live in France. And so at 50, I sold everything except for whatever could fit into 30 14 by 14 by 14 boxes and came to France. And the idea was not that we would get married right away, but we did. And I can tell you that I feel a bit like Edith Piaf when I say, no, I don't regret anything. I really have felt like, and then the 50s was my years of passing into menopause. And that really, if I thought the 40s were challenging, that became my new challenge. And yet, what I find is one of my personal philosophies is that I don't care where you wind up. This is just, again, it's my view. We always have one thread left somewhere in us. Somewhere there is a thread of something that we just have to really, really hold on to it. And so for me, that's one of my beliefs about being over 50 is that a lot of times by the time we reach that age, we've been there, done that, seen a lot, got the t-shirt, and we survived. And so then what I've found is to take all of that and how can we transform that? I've had the intention of being an artist and played around with that, but as I moved into my 60s, I began to do that as well. And so there is something about, for me, the power of being over 50 is taking all of life, everything that brought us to this place there's a lot of power in acceptance, because then I don't know how to put it any other way, but then I can really feel my power, because acceptance sometimes means being a little bit like Pooh or like Eeyore and sitting down and really just feeling what's going on all around us. So for me, and I don't even remember, when has it been 4 or 5 years that I've been in the Silver Tent, and a good bit of that has been online. But even that shows an enormous, I can feel the energy even through the screens of how we just, even through the screen, we can do incredible things. So there's my 2 cents worth.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Concetta. So I knew that you lived in France, obviously, but I didn't realize what had prompted that particular move. And I mean, what courage, Deborah, what courage you showed, as far as I'm concerned, right? And also you, Concetta. Brilliant, thank you. Who else would like to share their experience? Yes, Mary.
I thought I'd follow Concetta because, like you, I had a pretty weird 40s in my decade of 40s, because I started looking for a new job. I've been self-employed for a long time, and I started looking for a job because things had changed. And I remember a friend of mine, in inverted commas, saying, "You're far too old to get a job. Nobody will employ you at 41 or whatever I was." So thank you, friend. Yeah. So of course, being a Bolshie woman, like most of us are, when pushed like that, of course, I was determined to get this job, which I did. But I also had cancer during that decade, which made me sit up and take notice of what I was doing with my life and how I wasn't putting myself first, and those things that, like Deborah, you spoke about. And that started me on a long journey of self-discovery, perhaps, but also looking at ways of helping myself, complementary therapies and lots of reading, lots of spiritual development, perhaps I might call it. And finding my way home to myself is how I would phrase it now. I was lost. I had no idea who I was, where I was, what I was. I was just completely lost. And I heard that phrase coming home to myself, and it just made me cry because I had no idea where that was or who I was. And things have changed so much. I mean, my 50s, I think it was when I was 50, exactly 50, actually, I started Dare to Blossom Life Coaching as a business in 2003. Gosh, I can't work out these figures, they seem far too big. 20 years ago this year, yeah. And that's really helped me realize that even though I'm learning about being an introvert and a quiet person, I thought I had no power. I thought there was something wrong with me in the world of work because I was quiet and didn't speak up and all those things. But after a while, I realized that's just a different sort of power. Each of us individually are unique in the way our power expresses through us. And learning the way that works best for each of us and therefore for those around us is part of that journey through life, I think. I think a lot of us, however we see ourselves, male or female, whatever, come to that a bit later in life. It's that revisiting and getting off that treadmill, or however you might see it, of what's expected of us, and stopping for whatever reason and reviewing what we're doing with our lives. And I realized that the way I react to things, which is to sit quietly, to observe, to listen, to enjoy just seeing what's going on around me, to reflect on things, to evaluate sort of through my filters of whatever I'm hearing and seeing. Then maybe I will speak up and say something after that reflection. And when I'm in an environment where I'm able to do that, and which the Silver Tent has been a big part of that, it makes such a difference, because here I feel I'm able to speak up and be myself and be heard, in spite of being very different to many of the other characters that I meet in the Silver Tent, which is wonderful. I love that everybody here is so different and is able to be themselves and not feel they have to adapt. As I used to in the world of work, I used to feel I had to be something else other than I was. So something about that journey. And now, last year I was 70, so there's another decade I'm just beginning, and it's already just feeling really delightful. It's feeling a way of being my wise elder self, and I'm sure I've got lots more to come. I'm still doing what I do, and writing and publishing and sharing and speaking and all these things. There's just something about doing that in that company of our group of women that we have here, that you've pulled together so beautifully, Francesca, from around the world. There's something about that, and I love the unique stitch and the united stitch, because I'm not a knitter. I have many friends who are amazing knitters and create these things, but I know enough about knitting to know that if the stitches aren't united correctly, then the whole piece falls apart. So therefore, being united stitches is such a beautiful image for me, that just shows that we're each unique and we're each part of the whole. There's something there that's really, really special for me. Thank you.
And thank you so much, Mary. Thank you. I was so delighted when you said that you'd be part of the panel, because it's really lovely to have the different temperaments, isn't it? The extrovert and the introverts, and it's a really, really lovely. And yeah, I love this imagery of the unique and united stitches of the cardigan of life. Wow, so thank you so much. So Annie, yes, I'd love to hear from you.
Thank you. Yes, it's really lovely hearing everybody, actually, and takes me back, my 40s. Oh my goodness, it was crazy. It was so crazy. I had everything that happened to me in my 40s happened, if you know what I mean. And definitely lots of dark nights of the soul too. And coming out at 48, coming out of that, whatever it was, and then I moved and got another job. So still on the treadmill. I hadn't really realized that I knew I had to look after myself, but I didn't look after myself very well. My son was only 15 at that time, so I needed to work. But yeah, power. I want to talk about power. What is our power? And for me, it's the letting go of everything else. It's not sort of holding on to power. It's like completely letting go of all the conditioning, all the darker stuff that we might not have wanted to look at, really, really claiming my shame or my blame or my judgments. But also within that, it's like the more you do that, the more one's heart expands, and the more you just feel compassion. This has been my experience anyway. So I'm Mary, I'm not 70 yet, I'm 70 in September. And it's like another rite of passage, and I'm making sure it is. So when I stepped into my 50s, it was like, okay, I was still working, probably burnt out a bit, got ill a bit, didn't learn a lot. And then when I was 59, I got diagnosed with cancer, so similar. And that was like, this is a gift. I've just got to look at it now. I've just got to stop. So I did it. I stopped by actually agreeing to have treatment. Because that was the only way I could have stopped, I think. And so I had 2 years of really surrendering and everything that I needed to let go of, and really, really stepping into that place of real deep self-love. But along that time, I'd also been training shamanically. So it had been about really developing another depth of understanding with nature and the earth. And I would say that is what's enabled me to really step into my power, has been knowing that I am the earth, and that my relationship with the earth and the mother. Along the way, there's been lots of struggles, lots of stuff happening. But 2 years ago, and I'm thinking about you, Deborah, 2 years ago, I sold my home. And it was like, I got to the point, I've been there 20 years. I'd never been in one place so long. It really held me down. And then, but it was safe, yeah. But I just had to do it, and I had to sell it and not know what I was going to be doing. I had been hoping to be in community, and it hadn't worked out. So I bought a camper van and I sold my house. Sold my house, broke my ankle, I might add. So like, completely uprooted. And then I bought my camper van, and I've been in a camper van doing different things, and not doing a lot, but doing masses. Does that make sense? All at the same time. And what I'm noticing with my energy is I can't put it into mind stuff anymore. I can't write my book. So my book was going to be called Cancer as Initiation, because it's all about us facing that really deep, dark stuff, and facing death. I work with death, always have done, but it's really about embracing death so we can really live. That's been my experience. But more and more and more, it's also, for me, it's about the next generation. It's about how can we support the young people? How can we support children who are not yet even born? Yeah. So for me, it's about the power of the wise woman now at this time, and the power of I don't even want to call it the goddess, but the deep divine feminine. How can we really rise in a way that's really coming from a place of love and not ego? So, so I am in the middle of setting up a community of children being home edited. It's going to be crazy. And it looks like it might happen. There's 10 families. So for me, that's on the micro scale. That's like saying, and I'm the only elder, but it's a micro scale. But it's also about how can we influence people every day by being present in ourselves. So it's not about having to be mad in the doing. It's more about the coming back to home, as you were saying, returning home to oneself. So for me, that's where the power lies, along with our connection with the earth and all beings, being the mycelium. We're talking about the blanket and the stitch, but actually it's also about the mycelium, all those connections, all those women over 50 across the world. And can you imagine the power of that? It's phenomenal. So
Exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Annie. Thank you so much. I can so sense how actually we're going to have so many conversations, and welcome all of you back as often as you can come to participate in this, because I had this idea that it would be like one panel discussion. And what was I thinking? Like the power of women over 50, you can condense into an hour. I don't think so. It's so many strands of it, and it'll be very exciting to see where it wants to travel. So thank you, Annie.
So if I just say one thing about traveling, because when I went traveling over the winter, I had to not know where I was going either. And it was the landscapes that called me. It was the land. And I think that's very important in terms of us knowing that we're not just humans, we are connected, we are the same, and we are the same as the earth. Yeah.
Beautiful. It's the land that calls me too. And that's only something that's happened since that dark night of the soul, actually, round about then, that whole sense of just some, like I think all the land is amazing, but there are particular bits of land that just speak to my heart and soul in a way that other bits of land don't. And I don't know what it is, but yeah, fantastic. Thank you. Anyone else like to share their, yeah, Vanessa?
Yeah, for me, when I turned 50, it was like I'd quite recently become familiar with smartphones. It was when we first started to get, iPhones or whatever. And I remember really having the image of it was like, you know, how you turn it around to do a selfie. And it was literally like that. It's time to look at me. I'd served everybody else. I had 4 children. I'd been working all over the world doing international marketing and always for other people. What about me? And I woke up about 2 a.m., probably in the beginning of, I don't know, hot flushes or whatever it was, and just suddenly thought, it's time. Turn that phone around. And it's time, it's me time now. And really feeling, right, I want to feel cherished, because I was so burnt out with everything going on. And at that stage, it just all, once I had that clunk click, it was just talking about stepping into your power. It just all flowed from there. Everything that had kind of been leading up to that point, it just overflowed. It was actually like a volcano. And I ended up leaving my corporate job. Then I left my marriage and my 4 children. And then I made a new beginning, reconnected like Concetta with my first sweetheart, and moved back to England and started. I was actually had lots of connections with people asking me to help do the promotions for them. And one of them led me to Francesca. I was doing interviews with somebody who was one of the founding people in the Silver Tent. And then she did an interview with Francesca. And as soon as I heard about your vision of the 1 million women, of how everything can ripple out, I thought, I just got it straight away. And it's been such a source of support and interest, and I just feel like every day is a new beginning, and it's forever and ever more and more fun. And it's and I can see we're snowballing, and there's no stopping us. There's no stopping us. I don't know, avalanche, snowball, whatever, but it's definitely we're going places. And the initial vision of the Silver Tent of challenging convention just seemed natural to me, because I was always a non-conformist, never fitted in with anything of. I was always on let's say at a different, looking at things from a different angle, and so it's just been wonderful. It's like coming home into the Silver Tent with because I guess you guys were all like that, right? It's a familiar thing. So in terms of the power of the women over 50, one thing I have spent my entire life, and that is living in community and developing community. And I have a very strong feeling that this Silver Tent community, this togetherness that we forge as we connect, is going to absolutely be a tsunami. And we are right at the beginning of it. We're right at the beginning. It's now taking shape. And I really feel that community, although we all had kinds of, each one of us will have a different idea about community. It's exactly like you say about your stitches. They have to be united, and it has to be together, because together, that's where it is. And so that's where our power is. And there's never again do any of us have to feel alone, because we have this this togetherness. So there's my tuppence worth on that.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much. And so interesting, because I think after Deborah and Mary and Conchetta spoke, I suddenly got this sense of like the tidal wave. And then I remembered that Jeanette Kishori Mackenzie had talked about all those years ago when this began, about the tsunami. And then you've used that word again.
Yeah.
And there is that sense, isn't there? Is that,
Yeah.
yes, the Silver Tent is coming up to its 7th birthday in October. And now it feels like we've done the groundwork, and there is the ocean swell that's happening now.
Now it's time to ride that wave.
Yes, it is. Oh, surfing. I've never surfed in my life. So thank you. So over to you, Charlemagne.
Thank you. It's a real honor to be in this good company. Just briefly, I only encountered the Silver Tent this past year. It's only been a few months, really. It hasn't even been a year yet. And it's interesting listening. There's a lot of common threads in all of these stories. And when I turned 50, I was in a very difficult place in my life, and I had left my home and I had left my community, and I was forging a life that I thought I was going to really be enjoying in another part of America, on the opposite side of the country. And the week of my birthday, I was so much unrest, and I sat down and I thought, it's my big birthday. I'm turning 50. What do I want to do? And I thought, it's been a long time since I've traveled, and I want to travel alone. And I want to go some places where I know I'll be held and received in great love. And I want to go to some places I've never been. And I initiated it. I called it my Any Way the Wind Blows tour, because I planned barely at all. And that thing about being directed by the land felt completely present everywhere I went. I met people, some of who I had only encountered online, some of who I'd never met before, and there was immediacy of connection. I felt so held and so blessed through the entire thing. I took 89 of my allotted 90 days and just went. Began in Iceland, which I'd never been to. Went to Paris, which is where my very best friends in the world lives. And then went to England for a while. And then I went to places I'd never been throughout the UK. I had never been to Scotland. I had never been to Ireland. And I met friends old and new, came back to Paris, went to Austria. I mean, I traveled all around. Went to Sweden, went to Switzerland, stopped back in France, and then came back to America. And part of the great lesson for me in that was, first of all, my family was like, don't travel alone as a woman. Well, that was pshaw. I was going to be doing that. And then also, well, traveling alone as a 50-year-old woman, wasn't I concerned there would be things I wouldn't feel comfortable doing? I'm like, why? The number means nothing. It's not about that. And the idea of where the power lies, I believe it lies so much in our hearts. One of my grandmothers lived to be almost 101. She died just before her 101st birthday. And one of the things that she used to like to say a real lot is, if you don't tell anyone your age, you're whatever age you want to be. And I really feel like it's mindset. I mean, yes, there's physical things that happen in the body, obviously, but I think that the way that culture is and has held women for a millennium is breaking loose. And the tsunami, I think, is huge. What's happening with people who are doing more and more, even as they are getting older. there's opportunities abound for women. And so I love that we are investigating this and that we're going at it the way we are. And to so much of what you said, Annie, resonated with me regarding the divine feminine rising. And it's a lot of what I teach and what I do in the world, from young women, young girls, all the way into holding the hands of the dying. Because then so much of what I feel called to is holding that space. And it's not about me, it's about being the vehicle and the vessel for whatever needs to come through, and grounding it in love and grounding it in gratitude with the land and all of the people and other non-people beings that I'm connected to. So it's with great gratitude to join you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I can hardly believe that it's only been a few months that you've been part of the Silver Tent. You feel like such an intrinsic part of it now. So I can't imagine it without you here. And so thank you so much for sharing. Something interesting that's leaping out for me is one of the themes that I've been aware of what we've been saying is that sense that over 50 or after 50, it's like, what about us? What about me? And that sense of making us as an individual our priority rather than everybody else. And yet at the same time, we're talking about togetherness and community. And I'm just wondering, like, they sound like they should be opposing energies. It's like it's either about me or it's about togetherness. How can it be both? And I wondered if anybody wanted to comment on that.
I'll comment on that if you like, because like the way I see it is that sometimes we need to work on ourselves in order to do our own internal healing and to focus on our joy. And when we're doing that, we're actually working for the collective, because when we're working on ourselves and raising our own vibration, we're affecting the vibration of everybody around us. And so we can work for the community, we can work for our family, you know, by doing the ancestral healing. We can clear the family lines, we can, you know, the generational patterning and things like that. So it's never selfish to work on yourself. That's the way I see it.
I think it's such an important point, isn't it? That it's never selfish to work on ourselves.
Yeah, but it's also about being aware of the wider community and being of service in whatever way you can. But sometimes that's just about holding space for somebody. It's not physically doing anything, it's about holding space.
I love that. Thank you. And I was thinking too, that whole sense of how much easier it is to connect with others the more we love ourselves. And that's very powerful too, isn't it? And that comes from doing the stuff, doing the work, whatever that might be for each one of us. Yes, Annie.
Something I think that Deborah said that made me remember that it's not easy. It's not easy, this individual and community and collective. And, you know, we're being and living in a world that still has not very nice opinions of older women. And although it's great because we can be invisible, we can dart around and no one sees us and we don't have to worry about it. So I love that. But at the same time, I just wanted to put the flag up and say, you know, there are times when I've really struggled. There are times that it's been really painful. There's times when I felt on my own, even though I know I'm not. And I also have a collection of older women as friends who, you know, and very old friends. In fact, I'm in my 70s. I've got 2 school friends who I've recently got back in touch with coming. It's just a family and a very close friends do. And that's part of the healing. Actually, that's what I want to say. We never stop the healing for ourselves in order to be there. What you were saying, Deborah, about, you know, families and ancestral work, you know, and we don't know the impact we have. And we don't know the impact of our journey. We don't know the impact of the pain that we've gone through. And, you know, we've all been through, and yes, we have joy. And what Vanessa was saying, each day is a new day. Thank goodness. you know, but it's not opposed, because it is one. Let's go back to the oneness again, you know. And I'm waffling now, but I just wanted to bring up the fact that it was painful, and it can be painful. And, you know, just going off in my van isn't always easy. I am on my own, you know, and it's free. I'm free. It's freedom at the same time. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, it can be painful and it can be difficult, can't it? I think there's loads of challenges, but you know, one just something else that just really springs to mind is that, you know, we're talking about vibration and ancestral healing and, you know, that kind of thing, and shamanic practices and connecting with the lands. And I wonder if there might be people watching thinking, well, it's all very woo-woo, isn't it? And I just wonder, what does the panel think? Do you think you have to be like on the woo-woo scale to be able to access this wisdom? Or do we all, as women over 50 or post-menopausal, have access to our own wisdom, regardless of whether we have that spiritual outlook or not? Yeah, Mary.
I think that for me, it's been as part of being able to be myself and come home to myself has been listening to my body. So purely the physical to start with. That's where I started really with the experience of having cancer. I'd been totally ignoring my body and the messages it was telling me. And, you know, that's nothing to do with woo-woo as such. It's not giving away my power to whoever else, you know, the doctors that say one thing and this, that, and the other. Anybody else who tells me what I can do with my body or how my body should be feeling or what could be happening to it. And of course, that's been a whole journey. And, you know, there's a place for all sorts of different sorts of medicine at the right time in the right place. There's something about that, you know, just being fully present. And again, what Annie said about connection with the land, that's something that's really, really precious for me too. It's the fact I'm lucky enough to live in a very beautiful place in Cornwall, but I've always been connected with the land wherever I've been in particular ways. And even, you know, usually I go on the same walk 2 or 3 times a week in the same place, and it's always different, but it's just that feeling of being grounded and just looking at my feet standing on the earth and knowing that I'm part of that, and that, you know, every atom, every molecule in my body has come from, you know, another part of the world, the earth. You know, every atom renews itself frequently, as science tells us. So we're all sharing the same physical being in a way, all these things that make us up, the water and the goodness that we eat and all those different things, the air that we breathe, is something that's shared, and yet we're still unique beings, individuals. And there's something about, and the special thing about the Silver Tent community is that it doesn't feel that we have to be the same. I've been in communities where there are things that you have to fit in with, and, you know, I've never felt one who could fit in with things. That's been one of my challenges in working life. You know, I don't fit in. I'm different to other people, and most people are like that, but they don't often want to acknowledge it or don't feel they can acknowledge it. And being able to do that has made a big difference. And I think, again, that's the joy of this particular community, so we're all so different, and yet we have so much in common. And that's that paradox of being human. I think it's just that paradox that there's this and this. And that's the same with everything, I think, in life, really. It's this and it's this. And we're all different and we're all the same.
Yes, it's very strange, isn't it? Even trying to contemplate that, is I so get the truth of that. And yet my brain just goes like, yeah. Yes, trying to encapsulate all that. So thank you so much. And I love the idea that there's that real like grounded solidity of becoming really aware of your body. And yeah, that's lovely. Thank you. Concetta.
There are so many connections. I don't think we have to be woo-woo, but I can honestly say for my own self, I don't know how I would have made it had I not had a connection to something that I could not see, touch. You know, it wasn't in physical form. I'm agreeing with Mary. We're somehow all connected. And that's my belief, as if we all, it reminds me of trees and how, for example, the aspen trees, their community, their roots go out underneath. I mean, and that's a little bit how I view us humans. It's not always easy to be with some of the other people, other trees standing next to us, but we're connected. And it goes back to what I said earlier about having one thread left. When I think of the moments where I was, call it whatever you want, but on my knees, when I had finally just surrendered and said, oh, that's it. What else? What do you want? You know, and had I not had an answer, I can't imagine where. So I guess what I'm attempting to say is that connection to the earth, that connection to something greater than myself came up through me and connected with me, or that's how I feel about it. We connected together so that we could go on, and I could go on. And so I don't know, whatever works for people is the way I'm looking at it. It doesn't have to be woo-woo, because I just do believe that there is something greater than myself out there that I'm connected to. And someone posted something in the tent this morning to speak to what you were talking about, the individuation. I don't know if you'd be okay with me reading it. It's the one by Oriah Mountain Dreamer House.
I love that.
It's called The Invitation. There is a tension in living fully, what often feels like an opposition between our longing for solitude, where we can find our own company, and the desire to be fully and intimately with another and the world. When we learn to live with both the desire for individuation and the longing for union, we find that they are simply two ways of knowing the same ache. We all just want to go home. And for me, the earth, that's it. I'm going to echo what Mary was talking about, and well, others have said this as well, is that it's going home. So again, that was my 2 cents worth.
Thank you. Thank you. Beautiful, really beautiful. So do we think that every woman over 50 has access to power in this kind of way? Like every single woman over 50? Think that?
Francesca, I think it's any woman, any age has access to it.
Interesting.
I know we have to go through a journey of like knowing ourselves, but that journey is unique for each individual. And some people get it at a very, very young age and they're standing in the power. You know, I've seen like people in the teens that are fully in the power. So I don't think it's an age thing, but I think as we get older, we've had more life experiences that have helped us to get more reflections and to learn those lessons where, and knowing that there is no right, there is no wrong, there just is, and knowing that every roller coaster that we've ever been on, all the lows, we have to have the lows in order to see the gifts. And so I think it's at any age.
Wow, brilliant. Thank you. And Annie?
Yeah, I'm sort of like really reflecting on your question, and thank you, Deborah. Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you say, but also I'm thinking, you know, it depends on your culture, depends on where you live as to what you're able to. I mean, it's a bit of a white Western woman reflection, really. I think there's a lot of power in the feminine at any age. I really agree, but I think for some of us, it's easier to be able to unshackle ourselves in order for the phoenix to rise, you know. And I think for some people, you know, it depends on your lifestyle, it depends on your situation, your circumstance, as to whether you can really feel free enough to really step into your power. And I just wanted to say that as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Wow, well, we're coming close to the end of this particular one, although I'm not quite sure exactly what time we started with all the technical hitches that were going on. But I just wonder who would love to share anything around this conversation, either, you know, to throw into the mix, to share with those who are watching. Yeah, what else wants to come through? Yeah, Vanessa.
Well, that knowing that we are all one, and I love what Mary's saying as well about connecting with the land and feeling the atoms that made each one of us, like we're all fingers on the same hand. I think that is where we're at in terms of plugging in to that power as well. We're all one. It's all our power, and therefore the expression of it is always going to be each one in our own individual way, like each individual finger. But the power itself, we just need to plug in, and it's all there. It's all already done. It's all there already. So just plug in.
Plug in and wait for that surging, rising tide that we're all going to be surfing on fairly soon. Wow. Well, thank you so much, everybody. Really, really appreciated. If anybody's got anything that they want to close on, and I'd welcome that. If there's any other comments?
I'll just close with a theme that's come up during the discussion, actually, and that's about connecting to the land and being called to different places and grounding. And, you know, I think grounding is the most important lesson that I got when I was in the Amazon, about the importance of physically being rooted to the earth. Because I think a lot of us, like before then, when we were doing energy exercises, I didn't realise how often I was out of body. And so I think that grounding and sending your roots right into, you know, the centre of Mother Earth, and being here in the physical and being here now, you know, we're here to have this awesome human experience where we can experience multidimensionality in this physical body. And it's such a gift, but we have to be rooted in order to do that.
Beautiful. Thank you, Deborah. And Mary?
Yes, just one thought that occurred to me is that a lot of the conversations I've had with women, not just women, but a lot of people about power has often been they've been afraid to claim that because of the connotations of it, of, you know, domination and fear and control. And the strength of the Silver Tent is this community is about the feminine power of collaboration and sharing and community. And that's what human beings want and desire, I believe. They don't want the other sort of power. Sometimes that word is a barrier. So I think stepping into your power can be just a really tiny step. It needn't be a huge leap. It can be a tiny step. And then it leads to another tiny step and another tiny step. And before you know it, you know, you've traveled a long way.
That's lovely. And we're going to be talking probably a little bit more about that tomorrow, Mary, aren't we? So Mary and I we're having a conversation, just the two of us, tomorrow around her new book. So that's going to be brilliant. So I'm looking forward to that. Yes, and I was just thinking as a closing thought is going back to something you said, Vanessa, is that we never have to be alone. And you know, just talking from the perspective of the Silver Tent is that, of course, we don't ever have to be alone, because if we're all one, then we're not actually alone. And yet the sense of the Silver Tent is that you can come and definitely not feel alone. You can reach out to others. And, you know, I can't remember who it was actually now that said that there's, I think it was Conchetta, about the magic that happens when we're online together, even when we're not in person, but we're online. We often have this incredible sense of magic and connection and synergy and synchronicity. When we come together in person, that's ramped up massively as well. So for those of you watching, if you want to get involved in the Silver Tent in any way, just join the Facebook group if you're not already part of that. And if you're in England, most of our offline events at the moment are happening in the UK, although we're looking at exploring further afield as soon as we can. Let us know if you're interested in joining up and just seeing what it's like to, I don't know, hang out. Really. All very easy and yeah, lovely. So thank you to all of you for participating in the panel today. And if you want to join me on any other of these panels, I would love it. And thank you for watching this as well. Let us know your comments, your thoughts about this, and hopefully we'll see and hear from you in the Silver Tent community on Facebook. So lots of love to you all. Thank you.